The Candy Bomber. A Story of Hope and Generosity by Elliott. Colonel Gail Halvorsen, known to many as the Candy Bomber or Uncle Wiggly Wings, was a pilot in the United States Air Force. He is famous for dropping candy and gum to children behind the Berlin Blockade. My thesis is, Colonel Gail Halvorsen broke barriers by going over and beyond his normal pilot duties and bringing happiness to children who worried about losing their freedom. He delivered candy and hope to people affected by a very real barrier, the Berlin Blockade. Gail Halvorsen was born on October 10, 1920, almost 100 years ago. When Halvorsen was 22 years old, he joined the Air Force. After completing pilot training, he was sent to Germany in 1948 to be a pilot for the Berlin AIRLIFT. Halvorsen was sent to Germany because of the Berlin Blockade. World War II had ended in 1945, 3 years before Halvorsen was sent to Germany. After the war, Germany was split in half between the Soviet Union and the Allied countries, France, Great Britain, and the United States. The capital city, Berlin, which was surrounded by the Soviet half of Germany, was also split into two. This worked out okay until the Soviet leader, Stalin, decided to block Allied trains and trucks from traveling to Berlin. This was called the Berlin Blockade, and it was the first move in what we now call the Cold War.
Everyone forgot or took for granted freight, electricity, roads, victuals. Until June 1948. When suddenly the trains stopped. For technical difficulties, traffic between Berlin and the western zones was banned. Canceled timetables, dead trains, walls of words, and orders blockaded the city. The blockade even cut electric power and put out 75% of the lights. People used candles if they could find them. Movement in and out of the city stopped. Factories now manufactured hunger and fear.
The Soviet Union blocked all trains and roads to West Berlin. There was no way for Allied countries to deliver gas, food, or other basic supplies to families and children who lived in this part of the city. This is where Colonel Gail Halvorsen and the Berlin AIRLIFT came in. The Allied countries, led by the United States, decided to start delivering gas, coal, and food by air. They called the effort Operation Victuals. Gail Halvorsen was one of the pilots who flew a C-54 cargo plane. These planes delivered needed supplies to post-war Berlin. The people living there were so appreciative.
And every day they pumped harder and faster, pumping life into Western Berlin. 700 flights, 700 heartbeats every 24 hours. In the air and on the ground, Americans, British, French and Germans working together to make this city strong again. That's the story of the air bridge.
One day, Halvorsen was at the Berlin airport when he noticed a group of about 30 children standing behind a barbed wire fence. The children told him, "When the weather gets so bad that you can't land, don't worry about us. We can go buy him a little food, but if we lose our freedom, we can never get it back." Halvorsen was touched by their words. He reached into his pocket, pulled out 2 sticks of gum, and gave it to the kids. He watched as the kids split the gum up into 30 tiny pieces and shared them. Halvorsen realized that they had nothing in their life, and he felt bad that he had nothing else to give them. He told them that he would come back the next day and drop a whole bunch of gum from his plane. When they asked him how they will recognize his plane, he said, "Don't worry, when I'll fly by, I'll wiggle my wings." Later, the children called him Uncle Wiggly Wings for this reason. That night, Halvorsen, his co-pilot, and his own engineer collected candy rations. Pilots were only given a small amount of sweets every week. When they collected the candy, it was very heavy, and they didn't want it to land on the children and hurt them. So he made tiny parachutes out of handkerchiefs and dropped them the next day. The candy bombs were a big hit, and Halvorsen made daily drops for 3 weeks. The crowd of kids began to grow and grow. Halvorsen knew that he was bringing joy to these kids that valued freedom so much. Halvorsen has not told his boss, the AIRLIFT commander, because he thought he was going to get in trouble. But when Lieutenant General Tunner found out, he thought it was a wonderful idea. He nicknamed the effort Operation Little Vittles.
One of our gang, Lieutenant Halvorsen, loved the small fry. He instituted Little Vittles. It wasn't much, just candy bars on tiny handkerchief parachutes dropped to the Berlin kids. A great guy. We all gave Little Vittles candy and handkerchiefs. Good flying, chum.
Soon, schools, churches, and community centers were collecting candy from all over the United States. Gail Halvorsen became known as the Candy Bomber.
Now I was joining what we called Operation Little Vittles for the kids of Berlin.
He received cards and letters all over West Berlin thanking him for his kindness. Halvorsen did not know that the Berlin blockade was just the beginning of the Cold War. The Soviet Union wanted to keep the Western countries out of its occupied territories. They even built a wall between West and East Berlin, separating families and economies. However, the human spirit of the Berlin people continued. The wall was brought down in 1989 and the Cold War neared its end. Colonel Gail Halvorsen went on to have a long career in the Air Force. He had numerous German schools named in his honor. He organized candy bomber deliveries in Bosnia, Albania, Japan, and Guam. Halvorsen believed that giving and being generous is one of the most important things a human can do. Differences in politics or religion did not matter to him. He believed in bringing a message of freedom and a spirit of joy wherever he went. At the time of this documentary, Colonel Gail Halvorsen is 99 years old and still brings joy wherever he goes.